Let's talk about the American Turtle, the world's first submarine that has a documented use in combat. It was built and designed by American inventor David Bushnell in 1775 for use during the Revolutionary War. See, Bushnell had an idea that he wanted a submersible vehicle, a submersible ship that he could attach explosives to that could be let off during the war and essentially take out enemy ships. But he didn't have the capital. And so he talked to then Connecticut Governor Jonathan Trumbull, who spoke with George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson, being an inventor himself, was incredibly intrigued, but he too did not have all of the capital that they needed to make this device a reality. And so between him and the governor, they talked to George Washington, who was a general at the time, and he forked over some cash to make this happen, although he wasn't necessarily a supporter at the time. So how did this submarine work? Well, why it's called Turtle because it was literally two shells that were welded together. And on the top, there were 7 looking holes in which the one single person that was driving this ship was able to look out from. It did move horizontally and vertically, but there were a lot of hand cranks and pedaling involved. And in order to make it sink or float, there was a pump system, as you see depicted in the image here on the far right. Water would enter and it would sink, and water would have to be hand cranked out in order for it to float. This is Ezra Lee. He is the pilot of the submersible, the American Turtle. At 11 p.m. on the night of September 7th, 1776, he took off and began piloting the vessel towards the HMS Eagle with hopes that he could take it down. Now see, things didn't really go well for poor Ezra Lee and the American Turtle. First of all, he started off late. It only propelled at 3 miles per hour, and he only had about 20 minutes of oxygen left, and it took 2 hours to get there. So there were some frequent stops that were happening along the way. Ezra didn't account for the HMS Eagle to have been fitted with a copper bottom, and so he was not able to tear the bottom of the ship off. And he was delirious at this point because he had been trying and trying to set off explosives that weren't exploding, and he couldn't tear off the bottom of the ship, and he had run out of majority of his oxygen at this point. The story is different now as to what happened after this, just because there aren't that many records available. This is kind of a hush-hush situation at the time. Ezra Lee was found floating and recovered alive, and he went on to live his life. American newspapers stated at the time that he set off explosives and scared the British away. But British newspapers and media at the time did not say anything happened. They were like, what? We don't know about anything. The fate of the Turtle, though, remains unknown. It could have sank, but we know that at the time they didn't want the British to get their hands on this invention. And so it could have been taken and stored somewhere. It could have been deliberately sank, or it could have been deliberately destroyed. There are plenty of replicas in museums far and wide, if you'd ever like to get a glimpse of what the turtle may have looked like yourself. What do you think happened? Do you think that he did it, he scared the British off? Or do you think that they were like, it didn't work out and it sunk, or they took it? What do you think? Follow for more.